Hello, everybody. I am Jarrett Ross, the Genie Vlogger, and welcome to another Genie Vlogger live stream. As you may be able to tell from my voice, I'm just getting over being sick. We actually was starting to feel sick last week during the stream. Didn't say anything because I was like, oh, maybe it's just a day. Then the next day, boy, did it hit me. Over it now, but still, voice kind of got cut out, and yeah, not 100%. So we'll see how long we're able to go today, but hopefully you all can hear me. I just saw this come in. Funny you say that, John, because I'm actually kind of hating my beard right now. I'm actually going in tonight after the stream to go get my haircut, my beard trimmed. But because I was sick and everything, and mustaches get in the way when you're sick, I just was like, oh, fuck. I'm sorry, excuse me. I should watch my language there. Not many times I've done that. But yeah, so it's just like, not 100 on my beard feeling right now. It looks like your beard with that orange shirt. All right, well, hello. We'll go through some hellos. Got my water. Need to make sure I keep drinking. So, yeah, I'm actually kind of used to this. Back when I used to play in bands and stuff, there was one or two shows I played when I was sick. And I remember there was one show I played when I was sick. That was one of the best shows I ever played at Deep South the Bar in downtown Raleigh. We had like 100 people out there or something, which packs that bar. And it was such a great set. And then the next day, I had no voice, like completely gone. But hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. Good to see all of you. This is actually really good because, one of the things we'll probably talk about today is AI. So made another browser extension for myself using AI. At this point, I think of a new tool, I just make it. Yeah, and that's kind of one of the benefits of AI is not necessarily in the research itself, but in creating your own tools and creating your own extra workflows. But one of the things we'll probably see over the next year is a lot of people developing their own new third-party tools that may completely change the game. And what that could be, hard to say necessarily. I mean, I don't know how many people ever thought about DNA painting before Johnny Pearl did it. I'm sure some people did, in a sense, but, when he came out with that changed the game. So, yeah. But yes, hello, all. Biscuits. I'm not sure why you're saying biscuits, but all right. Yeah, MyHeritage update. I think you're talking about admixture update. I feel like I heard somebody say that at some point somewhere, and I'm sure we'll see a lot of admixture updates. But with those, even though they're big news and it gets a lot of people viewing my channel, when I talk about that stuff, it really is such small potatoes in the entire world of doing genealogy, because for most of us that have done DNA tests already, if we're already in the depths of doing our genealogy, the admixture really doesn't add anything new to us when it updates. At best, it's just like we look at it and go, how does this compare to what I know about my family tree now? Yeah, but still an interesting thing. But yeah, hello all. It's 10 o'clock in Spain. Very cool. It looks like you grew your beard out with that orange shirt. Well, this shirt is actually a Wiki Tree shirt. And is this the orange? I can never remember. I actually have an orange version of this shirt, and I have a red version, and I didn't realize it because for some reason I've had one shirt in one drawer of t-shirts and the other shirt in the other drawer of t-shirts. And then I was going to do my laundry the other day, and I was like, wait, I have two of these. I have one that's orange, one that's red. So yeah, I guess it kind of looks red to me here, but on screen it does look orange. So I don't know, maybe it's just the lighting. Let's see. Change. Doesn't matter. Oh, that's too bright. There we go. That is good. Thank you very much, Eve. Yeah, I'm gonna try not to strain my voice too much, but yeah, Eldion Sale is frozen over. The Ancestry finally comes to their senses, which I'm guessing you're talking about the chromosome browser, basically. Us being able to look at what chromosomes do we share with our matches on Ancestry, and then utilizing that information to do DNA painting, which, just like a lot of the tools Ancestry has rolled out in the past few years, things that are on all these other websites, or a lot of the other websites, and are some of the best tools, and then Ancestry doesn't have them. Like the shared matches, I mean, shared matches comparisons that Ancestry now has, which you have to pay for the Pro Tools thing. But you know, for years and years and years, MyHeritage had that kind of shared matching. 23andMe had that kind of shared matching, and technically GEDmatch, I mean, theirs is a little bit different. They, you know, different kind of tools, but kind of similar, where you can actually see, okay, if I match this person, what matches do we share, and how much are we each matching those shared matches? And once that came out for Ancestry, people were making huge discoveries because all of a sudden we could do that work with the Ancestry matches. And so if they do that with the chromosome browser, I'm sure, I bet you Johnny Pearl would love that too, because he'd probably see DNA Painter go, ooh, because so many people that are on Ancestry would all of a sudden realize, oh, wow, this is the tool, DNA Painter. That's where I can actually utilize this information best. Nick, goedenavond, Werner Groningen. Hello. Hoi, hoi, allemaal. Hoi, hoi, and allemaal. I don't know. Hello to all my Dutchies. But hello. Yeah, can't wait to hear about new genealogy gadgets. Yeah, and some of the stuff we'll be talking about today is stuff that I'm kind of predicting will get bigger this year. But in terms of like new tools, you know, it'll be also interesting. If anyone has any ideas, you know, comment in the chat. Myself a little caffeine, a little water. Little cough. Okay, that's better. Oh, no sound. Oh wait, that was a while back. Everyone else, I think, could hear me. Okay, I think it was just you, Bryce. Yeah. But hello, everybody. Hello. Brian Rocket League. I hope Ancestry DNA come out with a DNA inheritance by grandparent one day. Okay, so kind of in a sense a reconstruction tool. It's not exactly what you're asking for, but in a sense that's what it is, where, you know, okay, which DNA of yours came from your grandparents versus, you know, the other grandparents. And so that's kind of what a reconstruction tool is, in a sense, is you take the DNA that you know of sharing with certain cousins, and the ancestor that you inherit that through, you can then assign to their profile. And so, you know, that's who you inherited it through. Yeah. Maven, I should pull out my online Genealogy for Dummies book that's older than me for this stream if we're talking technology. Yeah, I bet the online Genealogy for Dummies, that's probably so outdated. Yeah, I'm seeing Bryce talking about the audio and stuff. If anyone else is having an issue, let me know. But I'm kind of guessing that it's just Bryce because he was the only one. So yeah. Yeah, it's the Coca-Cola font. So, you know, parody. It's kind of like how for me, my merch, for those who don't know, if you want to go get it, it's great merch. It's a genealogy, gotta find them all. And it's, you know, the Pokemon font theme or whatever. So I had to do a lot of research to make sure that was good, because there was a whole court precedent set about Pokemon or Nintendo, whoever sued some company that was doing some sort of thing. I think it was actually like a weed related thing. It was called Tokemon or something. And they like sued this company, and then the company won in court because it was parody or whatever. So yeah. Let's see. We got more people. Biscuits is Appalachia thing. I'm a member of the Appalachia Project on WikiTree, and the leader lives in Georgia. Oh, okay. I wasn't sure what you were referring, why you were saying biscuits. I mean, I know what biscuits are. I live in North Carolina. Chicken biscuits are one of my favorite food. I've, you know, basically grown up eating biscuits. Even though my parents are not, you know, they didn't really grow up in the South. You know, they moved here and lived here for a lot of their adult lives, but I grew up here. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's not just an Appalachia thing though. It's definitely bigger than, I mean, it's the Southeast, you know, and especially Appalachian Mountains. I mean, Appalachia, you know, everyone's kind of more thinking, you know, Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, you know, West Virginia, all that. But it also goes up into Pennsylvania, and you know, so Yeah, it's a Southern thing. Here down in North Carolina, we eat our biscuits. We put our honey butter on that. We put some chicken biscuits. Oh man, we get some Bowberry biscuits down at Bojangles. Oh, you get yourself some real good eating down here. I'll tell you what. Oh, bless your heart. Sorry. Yeah, the green screen effect on the can. I love that. Can you guess what it is? All right. So let's actually get into okay, well we'll go through catch up. Hello, everybody. Oh yeah, maybe it's the all right, audio is fine. Yeah, it's a Southern thing. Yeah, very Southern thing. So yeah, I've made many a biscuit in my day too. So yeah, from Georgia. All right. So yeah, so excuse me. Hopefully my coughing is not gonna. I should probably mute myself when I do cough. But yeah, so talking about what are we gonna expect for 2026. And I think the first thing I want to kind of talk about is kind of one of the big updates that really rounded out 2025. And especially it's important for 2026 because we knew it started in 2026 for sure. Whole genome sequencing at MyHeritage. Now, at the beginning, like right now, for people that are getting their whole genome sequence results back, which a lot of people are, people were already getting whole genome sequence results back in 2025. It just wasn't guaranteed until January 1st that you would get whole genome sequence if you sent your kit in. And we won't see much difference at first, when people are able to download their raw data, which actually we're going to pull up Lewis Kessler's blog because it's the only one that I know about. Yeah, this is it. It's the only one that I know about that actually like looked at the data. So, and I'm sure a lot of the wiki treers are very familiar with Lewis. I know he was involved in both of my challenge weeks, I think, or at least the first one. So he did his results, and basically, he took a look at all this different information. How were his matches comparing, not just versus one test, but 2017 version, 2024. And you can go through it and see. But the one thing that did worry me a bit, and I don't know if we ever heard any info about this, and actually should actually ask them. I was just emailing Daniel Horowitz today from MyHeritage. But so for these results, let's see if that's coming up well enough. That should be coming up well enough on there. The Y chromosome, it doesn't they're not including any of that information or the mitochondrial DNA information. Now, that doesn't mean to say they're not testing that. It's just that right now, the raw data you can download is not the full thing. I forgot what it is exactly. It's like a limited version of it, and there's going to be more other versions of it later down the line. But for whole genome sequencing, that's one of the big things that I'm hopeful for with it, is that it's going to make more people be able to do Y testing and mitochondrial DNA testing, because the more people that do that testing, the more we can make out of those kinds of tests. So because of that, if we're not getting the data, or there's a question of, are they ever going to plan to do anything with it? My hope is that this is just a, for now thing. They have not, done it yet. But hopefully they will include that in the raw data, and we'll create tools for that. MyHeritage already partners with Family Tree DNA and Gene by Gene, which owns Family Tree DNA, in multiple ways, including with this whole genome sequencing. It's done through the Gene by Gene lab. So one of my hopes is that we will see this year people that do whole genome sequence testing through MyHeritage having some sort of an ability to get their results in a Family Tree DNA's Y phylogenetic tree and mitochondrial phylogenetic tree. Excuse me. It's getting sick and getting over things for the birds. All right. So that's one of my big hopes, is that we will see some sort of a connection there. Whether that happens this year, I don't know. But even if we don't necessarily see that, I'm hoping that before the end of the year, they may have some sort of a new tool or some sort of thing that takes the whole genome sequence results and makes it so that it is more worthwhile. Something. What that's going to be, who knows? But that's one of the beauties about whole genome sequencing on a major consumer DNA site like MyHeritage, is that it gives them the ability to figure out things that we would have never realized before. So yeah. Let's so let's check chat. Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is a good point. We'll kind of get into this too. Hoping that more people in America want to research their ancestry and family history with America 250 in early July, which, for those who are curious what that is, America this year is celebrating 250 years as a country. And so in July, it's going to be a big deal. The I forgot what it is, some, quintennial, whatever they call it. Is it the sesquicentennial or something? Sesquicentennial? No, that's the 150th. Deucecentennial? I don't know. But yeah, everyone, yeah. So we'll get into that too. Yeah, the Ireland 1926 census is being released to the public in April, so that'll be a big one for Irish researchers. So that'll be really cool. Oh yeah, Lewis was also a guest for the challenge, so he had his family lines looked into. That's cool. I didn't realize he was also one of the guests. That's great. And then, okay, Penny, yeah, you sent yours in. That, having misunderstood, it was not whole genome. I'll have to do it again. That's a shame. Yeah, that was one of the things that I think didn't get out to everybody, was, you hold it, then you can get the guarantee that you'll get it. Wigan Lad, excuse me. I received my Tell Me Gen 30x whole genome sequence results today. 5 weeks and 1 day turnaround. Currently realigning my FASTQ files to HG38. Look forward to comparing to my Dante Labs data. Yeah, that'll be very interesting. I don't know much about Tell Me Gen's whole genome sequencing, but I know that I've heard about it. I feel like possibly from you mentioning it in streams previously. Ren, what is the relationship between Family Tree DNA and MyHeritage? Family Tree DNA already has their Y chromosome tests. MyHeritage tests are relatively cheaper, at least now. Well, I don't know the exact relationship, but there's a few things to know. First off, Family Tree DNA is part of a larger company known as Gene by Gene Labs. And Gene by Gene is basically it's a sequencing lab. Here's their website. And they do all sorts of testing, well beyond the consumer market, which is what Ancestry testing is part of. So when I worked in investigative genetic genealogy, we had multiple cases that were sequenced by gene. But they are also the place that MyHeritage is having their whole genome sequence test sequenced. So if they're being sequenced at Gene by Gene, then they're probably just contracted as a client, I think, but I'm not 100% sure, because one of the things that Family Tree DNA updated recently was that they made it so that you can link your MyHeritage family trees on Family Tree DNA. And I need to get to a different part on this service. Let's see. All right. Okay, let's see that. I just noticed that my stream started glitching out a bit on my end. So yeah, so they do all sorts of Gene by Gene does all sorts of sorts of testing. So I don't know what will happen necessarily. Family Tree DNA is the only company that does Y-DNA and mitochondrial DNA matching and cells tests. There are sites that do allow Y matching and mito matching, but you have to upload your results to it, like YFull. So yeah, we'll have to see. And plus, the other thing to remember, those kinds of tests are really expensive. The Y test on family tree DNA, like you mentioned, the mito test is not super expensive, but it's more expensive than a MyHeritage test is. And MyHeritage made it cheap by doing 3 or 2x reads on the whole genome sequencing. So when it comes to whole genome sequencing, typically, they actually talk about it right here. Typically, you're looking at 30x, 60x, and 90x. So what that means is that they're going through the entire genome 30 times, or 60 times, or 90 times. But now they're doing what's known as low-pass whole genome sequencing. So I guess even less than 2. So MyHeritage is doing the 2x. And that's what makes it so cheap. Because with making testing cheaper for labs, there's only a few ways they can really do that. And a big part of that is by figuring out cheaper ways of processing the data. So like the actual tools that they're using, the chemicals that they need to use. Can they find a chemical that's way cheaper that gets the exact same results? Or, it's not as big of a deal, but, can they get better pipettes? This is not a pipette. This is just a pen shaped like a pipette. So if anyone's worked in the lab, they'll have that. But which that actually is, oh no, that's Eppendorf. Okay. I thought that was going to be a different company. I thought it was Gene by Gene for some reason. But yeah, so, they can only get it so many ways. But the other thing is, by having this sequence taking less time, so you have less, laboratory time. And so that's kind of what this low pass does, from my understanding. So, yeah, I don't know what the relationship necessarily is. It'll be interesting to see what happens as time moves on. Because Gene by Gene is a massive company, and even though Family Tree DNA kind of like feels like a dinky website, like if people don't realize that Family Tree DNA is basically part of Gene by Gene, they're kind of like, oh, I wouldn't be surprised if MyHeritage might want to try to buy this, but I don't know if they could, because I don't know if Gene by Gene wants to sell. And Family Tree DNA, part of Gene by Gene's business with the investigative genetic genealogy side of things, they allow investigative genetic genealogy on Family Tree DNA. And so when people are able to do testing through Gene by Gene for an investigative genetic genealogy case, as soon as they get the results, it can get into the database for them to start doing their research. If they test outside of Gene by Gene, then they're going to have to pay an extra fee, and it's going to take time for them to get that kit sent in. So, another company that's very big in the investigative genetic genealogy world that does their own sort of sequencing is a company known as Othram. Another company, actually, the one that I used to work for, DNA Labs International, they now do their own whole genome sequencing in-house, and they also do what's known as Kintelligence testing, which is a whole different side of things. And so for both of those, if they do that sort of testing, at a lab outside, depending on what their relationship is with Gene by Gene, because some might have a relationship where they can get it into a database quickly. Like I think Kintelligence is that. I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember. But basically, it costs money to get it in there. So there's a benefit for Gene by Gene to have Family Tree DNA still. Plus, if Family Tree DNA gets taken up by MyHeritage, MyHeritage is going to then cut out the investigative genetic genealogy part. So basically, what it comes down to is the relationship is just a business contracted relationship where, they're doing this work and they either see that sort of competition as not big enough. Gene by Gene is in a very different space for most of their business than MyHeritage is for most of their business. So it's kind of a beneficial relationship for both. So, all right, that was a long explanation of that. Oof. Hold on one sec. Okay, a lot better. Woo! Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely I don't think we'll do we'll do more than an hour today, but yeah. All right, so let's go. America 250 is semi-quincentennial. Okay, I thought it was something like that. It's hard. Those kinds of words are crazy, but it's funny because it always reminds me of when I actually worked in investigative genetic genealogy, because I did a lot of stuff outside of that in the forensics world when I worked at DNA Labs International. And so I learned about what's known as probabilistic genotyping. And when you do probabilistic genotyping, you're just doing a probability of this DNA is from this person, or even more. If you have a mixture of DNA, which happens a lot in different crime scenes, how likely is it that this one person is part of the input of this sample that seems to be at least 3 individuals or possibly 2 or whatever? So they come up with all of these probabilities that are like, 1 in a decitillion or something, something like that. And I remember just learning all these crazy numbers. Excuse me. Just sending my whole genome sequence through MyHeritage, anxiously waiting. Very cool. I'm hesitant doing MyHeritage because of privacy concerns. Interesting. Specifically for MyHeritage, or just like DNA testing in general? Because MyHeritage is one of the companies that has really gone out of its way, in my opinion, to show its customers that, look, we are not gonna, make your data easily available. And a big thing to show that is that they cut out their transfer upload service last year, so that can't happen. Toodaloo Fruitaloo, one of my wonderful Genie members. I'm waiting for mine to come in now. I waited until the beginning of the year to order due to the role of dice uncertainty. Yeah. So, but now no one has to worry. You send in those kits, they guarantee it's going to be a whole genome sequence. Yeah, I've done so many genetic tests they can clone me. Yeah. I imagine a lot of people in here like that. Go for Lynn. Before Christmas, I ordered the big Y and Mito DNA on Family Tree DNA when it was on sale. There's something I did not know was before I sent it back, I had to pay $31 duties, then the $14 shipping. Yeah, that's something that I've had to kind of learn the hard way through people telling me in chats and stuff, because from, my experiences in America, most of the time it's like either just a simple postage stamp or it's already prepaid postage. If you're outside of the US, depending on the company, you may end up paying a lot of different fees for shipping and duties and all of that stuff. So something that I've never personally experienced. So anyone in the US, you probably won't experience that, but anyone outside the US, and especially with all the tariff stuff going on, I don't know how that would necessarily affect it if it does, but yeah. So yeah, it can get expensive. And you're Canadian. Okay, yeah. So yeah, if you're Canadian, I have to imagine that's got to be with all the craziness going on about that. Yeah. Get a mist humidifier if you can. You'll thank me later. So I actually have one, and I had to turn it off because I went to go clean it the other day, because you need to clean them constantly, otherwise you're gonna just be spraying bacteria in the air. And I went to go clean an area, and I didn't realize there was like a whole other area. And when I looked at it, it was like, oh my gosh! And I tried to clean it. It was an area that you couldn't. So yeah, I need to figure out if I can clean it, or I need to get a new one. But you are correct. It makes a world of difference, especially because it's cold and very dry right now. Okay. So we've talked about some different things, but one of the things there's a few more things that I can't even think how to talk right now. There's a few more things that are on my mind that I'm hoping this year we will see really take off. One of those things is artifact testing. And I don't know if we will see it take off this year necessarily, but I feel like it's in a place where we may actually see it happen. So right now, Genetic Legacies, that is the company to do it if you want to get artifact testing. So formerly it was known as Keepsake DNA. There used to also be To the Letter DNA, but they're no longer around. So for those who don't know artifact testing, it's taking an artifact from that you knew your ancestor had and getting it DNA tested. So the most notable is sealed envelopes or stamps. They lick it, seals the DNA in. The other things, glasses, smoking pipes, dentures, toothbrushes, anything that might have DNA in it. And what's held this back is two things. One, the cost. It is expensive. There's two phases to this type of thing. I guess three phases technically. And so you can see, with each phase, it's not cheap. Granted, this is way cheaper than artifact testing used to be. So first, they have to extract the DNA. And this is the cheapest part, luckily. And this is where they're just taking the item and doing something to extract it. I don't know what extraction methods they have. One example that I always like to talk about that we used at DNA Labs International is what's known as the MVAC system. Let's see if I can find a good image of it. Their website's not that good, apparently. Yeah, it's a decent image of it. So the MVAC system is basically this thing where you just spray, actually, right here. So it's like spraying water and then sucking it back up. And so you can then get DNA off of actual items. Excuse me. So I don't know if they use this or what, but for a lot of DNA methods, it's like emulsifying it. So you send in one of those envelopes or the stamps or letters or whatever. They basically put it in like a water solution and then blend it up, and then that's how they extract that DNA. And so there's different ways of doing it. So one thing is, whatever you send in, you may not actually get it back. And then on top of that, even if you do get it back, it may be damaged, or they may have had to take part of it and, destroy it in a sense to be able to get DNA. So once they extract it, then they have to sequence it. So to sequence it, though, they need to have enough DNA that is not too degraded, because over time, DNA kind of just breaks apart and it degrades. And so the longer it is like that, the worse off it is. And so over time, or once you do the extraction, you might not have enough DNA to actually move on to the next phase. Sometimes you have to do the first phase a couple of times. And this is one of the places where maybe we'll see a change in that there's different ways of doing extractions and things. And so once we are, all right, I'm sorry, I'm not 100% people, not 100%. But with the extractions, once you're doing that extraction, you may have the opportunity to do it a couple of times. So, depending on the item, if you, I don't know what, can't think of an item necessarily that might be like that, but like, different items that, maybe you can test one part of it, you don't get enough DNA, so then you can retest again. So hopefully we'll see this come down in some form, I guess. But this part, phase 2, this is really where we hope to see the pricing come down, because when it comes to the DNA, you may not have a ton, or you may not have the full thing, but you have enough to get a sequence. So when I worked in investigative genetic genealogy, the number I always remembered was basically about 80%. I remember there were some that were like in the high 70s, where it was like, okay, just enough. Let's, we can see what we've got going on here. But if you don't have enough of the DNA, then, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. if you don't have enough DNA, you may not get enough to read. So with the whole genome sequencing low pass that MyHeritage is doing, bringing that pricing down, hopefully that's something that maybe genetic legacies can make use of too, because they actually use their own lab. I don't think they use gene by gene. I could be wrong, but maybe they can come out with a contract for that or something. But on top of that, there's also other methods that are now available, but not for the consumer side. So I already mentioned Kintelligence testing. That was something that I actually have the honor of saying that I was the first genealogist to solve a case using Kintelligence testing. There we go. So this was a DNA type of kit that was developed by a company called Verigen. Verigen is owned by a company called QIAGEN. And this company, Verigen, is also the company that owns GEDmatch. So lots of overlap with the genealogy and genetic genealogy world. But Kintelligence is a DNA kit that only looks at 10,230 spots on your DNA. Most DNA tests, like Ancestry DNA's test and 23andMe's DNA test, they're testing about 700,000 of these markers. For the whole genome sequencing, they're testing 2+ billion markers. So Kintelligence is testing an extremely small amount of your DNA. So with that, the reason it's so powerful is because you're testing such low amounts of DNA, so few spots, you can do it and get results for degraded DNA and low amounts of DNA. So I don't remember the numbers exactly, but just kind of off the top of my head, if I remember correctly, the minimum that you need to get a result for like a typical autosomal DNA test, I want to say is like 30 nanograms of DNA. I could be wrong on that, but it's a good amount. Like I want to say it's like 30 to 80 or something nanograms is the preferred. With whole genome sequencing, they can actually do it with less DNA because they use what's known as next generation sequencing, which I'm not going to get into. It's different than the old sequencing, which was known as Sanger sequencing. Just getting jargony now, but with next generation sequencing, it allows them to basically do whole genome sequencing with far fewer amounts of DNA. So I think they can get viable results with whole genome sequencing with as little as like 5 nanograms or something like that. But with Kintelligence, they can get viable results with as little as 1 nanogram of DNA. So you can see how important this would be for artifact testing. Now, I have said to the folks at Verigen, QIAGEN, GEDmatch, whatever, a billion times, I see this consumer testing and I see this for artifact testing specifically. And I've also spoken to Genetic Legacies, Daniel Helwig, who runs the company and is the founder, I believe. I've mentioned this to him, like, that's what I see. I don't know if that's going to happen this year, but I would love that to happen. That would just make artifact testing go up so much more. So if we see any of that, whether it's the low pass whole genome sequencing like what MyHeritage is doing or Kintelligence, or if someone comes out with some other low DNA amount type of test, that's where we may see this really improve. Then once you get the sequencing done, then they have now this third phase where they complete the profile and make it so that it can be on GEDmatch, which I do like the fact includes your maternal and paternal haplogroups if you're male, and then a written summary of your results. They used to do this in 2 phases, but I think it was much more expensive for each phase. So I don't know if it's the same overall for cost, but hopefully we'll see more people doing this, and that will mean we'll be seeing more DNA results of older generations. Because if people are doing artifact testing, most of the time they're doing artifact testing on items that are, that were their grandparents or their great-grandparents. And so these older generations are what really allow us to solve mysteries further back. There's multiple mysteries in my family that I would not have been able to solve had my grandmother not done a DNA test for me. And if I could have gotten all of my grandparents to test, granted, I never knew any of my grandfathers, they all died before I was born. But if I could have gotten all of them to test, I can't even imagine the amount of information I'd be able to uncover now. But yeah, I can't necessarily. But this may allow it. And the other thing with this is that we may start to see rootless hair testing become part of this. So for a long, long time, people only thought that when you tested DNA from hair, you needed the root because the only thing that you'd be able to get out of the hair shaft was mitochondrial DNA, no nuclear DNA. You know, the DNA of the nucleus, which is where your autosomal DNA is. And so they figured out how to do that. And with that, that now allows people with rootless hairs to get actual DNA sequences. And so in a sense, that is artifact testing. You know, the hair is the artifact. So that hopefully will become part of it, because if there's one thing I've heard people talk about that they have, it's rootless hairs. So yeah. Okay, I need a drink. Ooh. Okay. Yes, Matt, hairbrushes are a big example. Now I did talk about the whole rootless hair thing. For all you know, you might find a hair with a root on it in the hairbrush, but also just the hairbrush, you know, the brush bristles against the skin and all that. There may be DNA. Yeah. So Steve Array, I'm a half Japanese person, but don't look so Japanese due to my mom's side, who's Mexican. Will it still show on my DNA test? I'm waiting on the results. It should show on your DNA test. So if your dad is Mexican and your mom is Japanese, was that? Oh, your dad is Japanese, your mom is Mexican. So that should mean that you'll get about 50% Asian. I'm not going to say specifically Japanese, because in my experience, a lot of people who come from East Asian ancestries get a little bit of a mix of stuff. And, you know, you never know. Maybe your dad, even though you know him as 100% Japanese, maybe he's actually, you know, 75% Japanese, or, you know, maybe he has an ancestor that's Korean, or, you know, maybe there's something else going on that you didn't know. So, you know, like Fred Armisen, if anyone's seen his Finding Your Roots, he always knew his grandfather is Japanese. Then he found out that actually his grandfather was Korean and had passed as Japanese because of the history of, you know, Japanese attacking Koreans in Japan, and, you know, that whole thing. And so he passed as Japanese. And so Fred Armisen always thought he was Japanese. And it turned out, no, he was actually a quarter Korean. Not saying that's going to happen, but basically you'll see about 50% Asian. Could end up being a little bit more than 50%, could be a little bit less. And especially, you know, if your mom's Mexican, that means that she likely has some sort of indigenous American ancestry to her. And indigenous Americans have a strong connection to East Asia. And that means that you may actually, like, if you get 60% Asian, like you add up all the Asian, it adds up to 60%, it won't be that surprising for you. Because some of that could be just, you know, they're never perfect in reading this stuff. There's different things that goes into reading it and then analyzing it. So even if, you know, one parent, let's say your mom wasn't Mexican, let's say she was, you know, Britain straight from London sort of thing, even then you still might get more than 50% Asian. Doesn't mean that your mom would have Asian necessarily, because it's just, you know, funkiness of them reading it where they're kind of screwing some stuff up accidentally. But it will be really interesting for your results, I think, because with the Mexican ancestry, you know, Mexico is an amalgamation of other ancestries, and so you'll probably see that in your results as well. So yeah, so, you know, if you don't see it, then you know, if you end up getting, you know, 50% Filipino or something like that, then yeah, that's going to be like, wait, what's going on? Like you probably will see a good amount of Japanese in there beyond just the Asian. Yeah. So the big thing will be when you get your DNA results, do the cousins that you expect in your family that have DNA tested, do they show up as your matches? Because if they don't, if they DNA tested, then that's going to tell you, okay, something weird's going on. All right. Jero G3N, what do you think about the morality of exhumation for DNA testing? I understand that the petrious bone can preserve viable nuclear DNA for more than 100 years. I don't know. That's an interesting question. I've actually never been asked that. It's actually something I've thought about a lot, because when I worked in investigative genetic genealogy, multiple cases that I worked required an exhumation either before testing, because we needed to exhume the body to be able to extract a sample to test, often taking some part of the bone or teeth or things like that. And then there's been other cases, like one of the cases that I worked was the case of, why can't I think of her name right now? Debbie Lynn Randall. Bring this up. So this was a case, 1972. Debbie Lynn Randall is this girl who's kind of in like Main Street in Cobb County, Georgia, and gets abducted off the street. The people see the guy. They like have a description of him. No one can figure out who he is. Then a few days later, they find her murdered. And when we did the testing, once we got to the point of, or once we did the testing, we had DNA matches from both sides that I was able to build the family trees. Let me bring up Find a Grave. So once we did the testing and we found these DNA matches, I was able to build out the family trees and kind of get it. I was able to kind of figure out like, okay, this makes sense where the two sides are connecting, but it pointed to families in, like, I think it was Indiana. And then in building out the family tree, doing descendancy research, I then found a descendant who had moved to Cobb County, Georgia. And then on top of that, there was like a lot of weird stuff. The guy that moved down there was like a lot of crazy stuff that had gone on with him. So when we did that, when we started researching further and kind of checking that tree against our more distant matches, it all started to make sense. And so we were able to dwindle it down to the most likely suspects are either this guy or one of his sons. So the police took that information. They then went and, did investigations, because what we give them is an investigative lead. It's not enough for them to actually do anything with it other than investigate further. So when they investigated further, one of the sons stood out for a lot of different reasons. They went and talked to different family members, were able to get certain family members to agree to DNA test. And then they proved that, okay, it does match up, that it's likely this son, but it could be one of the other brothers necessarily. So we're going to exhume to get what's known as an autosomal STR comparison, which is the court standard comparison. The court accepted to say that, yes, this is the suspect. And the guy, so this happened in 1972 when he abducted Debbie Lynn Randall. The guy, William Rose, killed himself 2 years after the murder. And the family said that they always thought it had to do with something else. But now with this revelation, they think that he must have not been able to live with himself because of this. And so with that, we had to, we exhumed him to be able to test to confirm, yes, he is the murderer. So, when it comes to the morality of this, I don't know. I feel like there's a question with it in a sense. Depending on the person themselves of who you're exhuming, just in terms of that sort of respect. But the thing is that, in some cases, I feel like, there may be cases where exhumation is necessary and worthwhile. I honestly don't I don't know if that would be something to apply to, like, consumer stuff. I know a lot of us in the genetic genealogy community joke about, if only we could exhume, all our ancestors and get them DNA tested or something. And I remember I even heard some genealogists talking about, I wonder if we could develop a way where you could, like, get DNA from the soil or around their grave or something, which who knows if that's possible ever. But yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a question of the morality behind it, but I don't know. I've never had anyone ask me that straight up, but it's something I've thought about a lot, All right. I'm gonna get back to the genealogy side of things. And this will be, I think, the last thing that I want to talk about in terms of what I'm hoping we'll really see this year. And this gets into the AI side of things. But when we talk about AI, everyone always seems to talk specifically about large language models, Chat GPT, Grok, what's the other, Claude. I mean, there's a billion of them nowadays. Every company's coming out with their own AI. But even with that, within the larger scope, maybe generative AI. So generative AI is the larger umbrella that large language models are under. So that's just artificial intelligence that generates information based on a set of data that it has. So it takes that data and it generates something new utilizing that. So that's usually what everyone's talking about. But what I think in terms of AI that we're going to see as one of the biggest things to really change the genealogy world, and we're starting to already see it over the past year. We've been seeing it over the past few years, but it's really starting to pick up. And that's facial recognition. I'm sure a lot of you, or I guess I shouldn't say I'm sure, I know some of you are familiar with the facial recognition software that Ancestry came out with recently. That's, what do they call it? Ancestor Faces, or I've heard they called it something weird, and they made it really hard to find, which was really a downside. But what makes it so great is that it's the first time we're seeing one of the major genealogy companies take this type of AI and make it utilized for actually finding connections. Because the only thing that any of these big companies have done with it before was basically like, face comparison in terms of one-to-one photos. So Family Search, I believe it is, has Compare a Face. I guess they call it something else now because it didn't come up immediately for some reason. Let's see, oh yeah, they have it here. Okay. So yeah, so Compare a Face. And basically you upload, one photo of you and a photo of an ancestor, and you see, who do you look like the most? So it's not quite the same, but the similar technology. And so what we've seen over the past few years, a few years ago, we saw the first third-party company come into this space. That was Relative Faces. This is a company that I have seen at all of the big shows. Is it Relative Faces? Relative? What is that company? They're not coming up for me. If anyone knows what I'm talking about, let me know. But it was a third-party company. They've been at all of the major conferences. So if you're coming to RootsTech in March, I imagine they're probably going to be there. I think they've been in a lot of the smaller conferences too. And that was the first step, seeing a company do that, because there had been projects before that were private projects. Specifically, the project I always like to talk about is from Scott Genzer, where he found in the town that his family was from in Mielec, Poland. Let's see. I can use this website. That's a good one. The society where I'm the vice president, Triangle Jewish Genealogy Society. We had Scott come and talk. So Scott found that, there were all these photos from Mielec, Poland that had all of these amazing, they're all amazing photos, but nobody had identified these people. They didn't know who they were. So he thought, well, I know how to do facial recognition using AWS's recognition tool. And he built a system where he found all of these people where he had a photo, a name, and a confirmation that they were somehow connected to Mielec, Poland, and then made a database of those faces. Then, once he created his own database of people connected to Mielec, where he had a photo and a name, he took the photos without names from these archives in Mielec and started to compare it, and was able to start to identify people in these unknown photos. And then once he identified the people, he was then able to look at their family information and build their trees, and then identify further. And then once he was able to find, others, it's like, help confirm all of that. So when it comes to this sort of stuff, we're starting to really see it come forward. So, Ancestry's step is a big one, because now we're seeing it hit the actual big companies. And then that's going to get the other companies thinking, what are we going to develop for this? Now, MyHeritage has done a lot of facial recognition stuff, in a sense, using a lot of the same tools, but not for facial recognition. So, a lot of the enhancement types of tools, the tools that allow you to get your ancestor to dance and sing and stuff like that, it utilizes a lot of similar things to the facial recognition. But when it comes to facial recognition, just like all of AI, it has a limit to it. And there's a lot of issues with it. I mean, if you know how your families are laid out, you know that, there are some cousins that look a lot like each other, and some family that look a lot like each other, and then others that don't look like anybody at all. And then you have, all sorts of stuff going on where you might have one relative in a photo and you're looking at another relative in a photo and you're like, wow, they look so much alike. And AI may get that mixed up. And if anyone has used the ancestor face match tool on Ancestry, or whatever they call it, some of the results are just showing of how in its infancy this technology is. Now, I think that the best way that this facial recognition would be used for genealogy is similar to Scott's project, where it's not like DNA databases where you have a massive database of millions of people, or, a massive database of millions of photos, because then you have too much of a reach, and the doppelganger issue is way more of an issue with faces than you're not going to have DNA doppelgangers. Unless it's a twin that they didn't know about, you're not going to really have the statistics behind having a DNA doppelganger must be like crazy. But having an actual facial doppelganger, that is a much more likely scenario. So what they're going to need to do is create specific databases of regional or different types of connections. You have to have the databases where it's set, where maybe each, photo that's in there has specific tags to it. So, like the Mielec, Poland one, well, that's one side, Mielec, Poland, we have that connection. But then what if we have a bunch of photos that are, ship workers of the 1900s, and you knew that you had a relative who worked on ships, and so it's, limiting that population size so that you have a more likely chance of getting a positive hit. Because what the issue will be is that facial recognition is going to lead to a lot of false positives. With DNA matching, you match someone on DNA, it's pretty much guaranteed you have some sort of shared ancestor back there. It's not going to be a false positive match. It's just a matter of how far back it is. But with facial recognition, that's not going to be a guarantee. So let me check. Where are we at? Yeah, AI is so biased, not trustworthy, to say the least. I mean, there is bias to it. I wouldn't necessarily say it's not trustworthy, but it is, it's not. I'm trying to think how to put it, but it needs to be taken. It all needs to be taken with a grain of salt, almost like I don't know. It needs to be researched further. It needs to be further confirmed, whatever they give you. But then, also when we just say AI is so biased and not trustworthy, that's kind of too broad of a stroke, because, it's a little too much. But I mean, I get where you're coming from in a sense, but especially with large language models and all that. But yeah, I mean, there's issues with it. But the thing is there are real use case for AI that does work. It's just a matter of where is that line of, you know, useful AI tools versus AI tools that are ridiculous. Like people that, the type of people that will be like, oh, well, you're wrong. I asked ChatGPT and ChatGPT says this. Those people are what everybody worries about. And that is unfortunately going to be a large amount of the people that use AI, especially in the beginning. They don't know what they're doing. They just trust it. So yeah, it's not 100% trustworthy, but there are real use cases for it. And I feel like anyone that kind of denies that, they're not being realistic. But I definitely, I'm a YouTuber. I hate AI slop, all of this stuff that comes out. And then on the other side, there are people that are just full on AI detractors. But then on the other side, there's people that are just AI power, it's going to do everything, this and that. And it's like, dude, you are not being realistic. Like there's I forgot who it was. There was someone I was talking to about the whole YouTube thing about, the AI slop, and they're very pro AI. And I was like, oh yeah, AI slop on YouTube, it's really bringing things down. They're like, what does AI slop mean? And it was like, like someone that takes AI and they create something, they don't check it, they don't do anything. They just get something, they push it out, they, whatever. And you get these YouTube channels where they're pushing out, 10 videos a day because it's just AI slop. And it's just, how fast can you prompt it or whatever. And they were like, oh, okay. But I kind of had a feeling that they were like, it's not slop. AI is not slop. And it's like, no, you got to be realistic. Some AI is absolutely terrible. And the use cases for some of the AI that people do, like what I mentioned before, terrible. But on the other side, there is a lot of useful ways for it as well. Yeah, see, like this is a great example of don't use AI to tell you what your family tree is. But I'm guessing you might be talking about the facial recognition, which is also great, kind of what I was talking about before. You have family members that look a lot alike, you may run into issues of, is it really going to tell which family member is the right family member? Wouldn't work for adopt. I mean, I guess it depends. I mean, right now when we're talking facial recognition, we're only talking facial recognition to identify the same person. So it wouldn't matter on the person necessarily. It would just matter on, someone's adopted. It's not like their face isn't going to be able to be recognized against other photos of them as easily. But people are working towards relative matching with facial recognition. But whether or not that'll be actually doable, that's a whole other question. Yeah, I would imagine that's identical twins will be an issue. But if it's identical twins and they know that they're twins, then pop up. But if they don't know they're twins, then I guess it could be something where it's like, oh, it's probably a false positive, just doppelganger sort of thing. Matt, I don't call LLMs AI. They're very clever at data crunching and producing something that looks like it's made by humans, but it's not intelligent, not even close. Yeah, very true. I mean, very true. Basically, what large language models are is their predictive text. What's the term? Basically, just it's a constant predicting what's the next word. So very similar to I don't know. I'm not going to try to figure out something to compare it to. But it's something where it's just checking, okay, based on what they're asking, building this out, what's the next word that we would expect? And then it predicts it. And so that's why you get a lot of hallucinations with it, where, it's not gonna hit a point and go, oh, wait, the text that I just predicted, that's not right. It's just going to predict what is the next word. And then if it gets it wrong, that's why you say, no, I think you're wrong. And then it says it's analysis, and then it's new predictions like, oh yeah, blah, 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 blah. You are right, I'm wrong. But yeah, great use case. Programming helps a ton. Just giving it requirements, it usually meets them. And then I'm sure you've got to go in, you've got to edit it and clean it up and stuff, but it can be worthwhile. Bearvar, GPT is absolutely awful at basic questions like how two people are related if they share a common great-great-grandparent. I mean, I would imagine that because that's not I wouldn't think of that as a use case for Chat GPT. Like I wouldn't, in actual research, I would never use Chat GPT like, okay, tell me about my great-grandparents, or how is this person related to this person? I would not trust Chat GPT for that at all. What I'd trust Chat GPT with is much more on the workflow side of things or interpretation of things. So let's say that you have a document where you're not quite sure what's the historical context of this. What does it mean? What's the larger story? So you take that document, you upload it to ChatGPT, and you say, what is the story behind this? What does it mean? Please explain it in historical context, or however you prompt it. If you want to be one of those people that does, you are a genealogist. You're writing a novel about this thing and you're going to write a full page, whatever. But that's a great use for it because it's going to give you good information. Might not all be correct because there may be hallucinations, so you do need to check it. But in terms of workflow, it's going to be a lot quicker than trying to go across the internet or uploading to Facebook groups and, hoping somebody knows what it is, which, that can get you the answer too. But this is a much quicker, thus the workflow side of things. Yeah, I'm kind of just checking stuff. Actually, I should blow my nose too. It's going to be so nice when I get over this completely. Burke, do you think Genealogy World will be able to tell how two DNA matches are related more precisely? I think vast majority of people are skeptical since relationship estimates are too broad. Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest issue with relationship estimates is I think that a lot of the most basic users have a lot of misunderstandings, largely because the companies give them those predicted relationship distances that are less than, or most of the time they're subpar. And some of them are okay. You click into it and it gives you a more detailed breakdown. But I do think that things will develop where they will be able to figure things out more precisely. And that's where it's so exciting with the whole genome sequencing for MyHeritage, because that's where we're very hopeful that being able to look at the entire genome instead of just like a little bit over 1% of it, that will allow us to make a lot more discoveries and be able to come up with a much more specific prediction. One of the things that they were able to do a while back, and maybe they'll be able to apply it even further with the new whole genome sequencing stuff, is utilizing segment data to get a more specific prediction. So specifically, I'm talking about the site SegCM. This is a site by a genetic genealogist. Is it segcm.org or is it segcm.com? SegCM, what is it? Oh, it's DNAsci.com. Yeah. So with this, it does give you a more specific prediction. It has been around for a long time though, and I don't know if there's been any major updates to it necessarily, but maybe that's what we'll see with whole genome sequencing stuff. I am gonna probably I don't know how much longer I'm gonna go. My throat is definitely kind of on the ends of whatever, but try to get through a few more things. All right, Var. I asked this question to multiple AIs. Every single one made up something like second cousins only. Gemini got it right. If person A's great-great-grandfather was a full sibling to person B's great-great-grandmother, how are the two related? Oh, okay, yeah. So for whatever reason, their data set is not predicting the proper text. So yeah. But over time that will get better. And, the power that we'll see from large language models will be interesting to see what happens. But I think the focus on large language models has been a little too much. And especially in the genealogy community when facial recognition is such a big thing. And then optical character recognition. Although I think a lot of people are pretty obsessed with optical character recognition in genealogy. Kind of comes with the territory. You see the records. You want to know what it says. It's hard to figure it out. So, transcribus, everyone's all about that. Which I'm sure that's another place we'll see things really advanced. Google's AI assistant revealed a historical town that no longer exists that I didn't previously know existed, but it did help me actually decipher super messy cursive writing. Very cool. Very cool. One of my coworkers was trying to prove to me that Gemini could do Google searches. He kept entering a movie quote to see what movie it was from, and Gemini kept apologizing and thought his dad died. Oh, wow. That, I wonder, that could also be his prompt. If he doesn't know how to write the proper prompt for that, that could be the issue. Because I've seen some people, I've seen some videos of people that have used ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or whatever, and the prompts they give that stuff is it's okay, no wonder you're getting weird results sometimes. You've got to be a little bit more specific. Learning how to prompt is a big thing too. And if anyone wants to learn a lot more about AI and especially its use for genealogy, my recommendation is to go to Steve Little's website, AI Genealogy Insights, this website. And then also, if you're on Facebook, join the AI genealogy group that he runs with Blade Bettinger. Can't remember what it's called. But, I mean, this is where you get real use cases for how to properly use AI. So, visualizing a street and then putting the family names to it. Which, that's how useful that is. I don't know necessarily, but just, it just gives you ideas. Here's a great one. Taking a photograph and then creating this sort of outline and then getting it numbered so you can, make it easy to say who is who. There's a lot of great use cases. So I highly recommend Steve's site. And then on top of that, he talks about, how do you prompt stuff as a genealogist, and what have different people found for, if you want to figure out one thing one way, but then you have another, question that it makes much more sense to prompt a different way, that might be worthwhile. So, yeah. All right. I lost my spot. That's kind of funny. Thinks your dog is your cat. Let's see. I've possibly found a photo of my great-grandmother and my great-grand aunt on MyHeritage, but doesn't know exactly which one of them is on the photo because they're maybe identical twins. Yeah, that'll make it difficult. That'll make it very difficult. I'm very happy that it's been fun. Even though it's been a little harder on me trying to talk today, it's been fun talking about all this stuff. Okay, let's jump ahead. Matt Potter, I'd like some AI help linking trees of matches and offering possible connections based on surnames and dates. You would think that would be easier than some other things mentioned. I honestly think we'll see AI hitting genealogy or DNA matching at some point. I don't know if we'll see it this year, but I think that will be something we see. Actually, we technically have already seen that. 23andMe has that, because they have an AI family tree builder feature that automatically builds a family tree just by looking at your DNA matches. I think, well, I don't know if you're talking about DNA matches. You're talking about linking trees of matches. So I'm assuming DNA matches, but it could also just be, linking trees that match your tree sort of thing or something, which I guess that already exists too. But yeah, so I don't know, in terms of the DNA, which I'm just going to assume that's what you're talking about. I think we will see that. I think we'll see companies. I'm sure companies are probably trying to figure that out right now. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a team at MyHeritage hunkered down going, okay, how are we going to get this to figure out how these people are connected just by looking at their DNA the shared matches, and blah 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 blah. And I think we'll reach a point in the future where it's gonna do that pretty precisely, but that'll be a while. But yeah, yeah, you have to give it. I'm guessing you're saying, yeah, you have to give it really specific requirements to meet when doing programming. Yeah. Eldion, less than 3% of the whole genome is variable between Homo sapiens, maybe expanded to 5%. I mean, that's been the understanding so far, but who knows what we might be able to discover? You know, I mean, I think with DNA testing really in its infancy, in all honesty, I mean, especially on the genealogy side, but you know, now having whole genome sequencing so available in a large database, I think we're going to be able to actually get a much better picture of what we are seeing in terms of variability between various populations of Homo sapiens, various humans. You know, so it's like, you know, when they talk about with Africa, Africa is the place where there is some of the big, or not some of the, it is the biggest genetic diversity throughout the continent of Africa, while also in certain areas of Africa, certain population groups having the most genetic density, conformity, or whatever. And so, you know, that, you know, whether or not we can tap into that, you know, that's something that everybody's trying to tap into for all the sites, is getting, you know, much better testing from actual African born people that have, as far back as they know, their family ancestry in Africa. And that has been something very difficult for people to do all across the continent in Africa. So, you know, it's very pocketed of what information we have, but with the whole genome sequencing and all that, you know, maybe we'll find out something more expanded. Burke, what do you think about Genotech also? They have a good database for Eastern Europe, it seems. So I'm actually not very familiar with Genotech. I don't know if I've really ever used them. And I know I say this a lot, and I don't know if more companies are changing, but unless a company has DNA matching or actual like genetic genealogy tools, it's like I don't want to really focus on it. So I don't know if it has matching, maybe, you know. But yeah, I don't know anything about it. But if it is a matching database with a large Eastern European side, or a large Eastern European contingency in its database, that's it. That's a good competition against MyHeritage, because they're the one that has that part of the market cornered. They have the largest Eastern European database of testers. Matt, I'm talking about DNA matches, but I'd prefer it not to be all done behind the scenes and presented as hints, but saying this might be an area of research for more distant matches for you to look into. Yeah, true. Okay, they do. All right, yeah, maybe I need to look further into that company then. Genotech. All right, folks. Well, with that, I think that's going to be my limit. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. As usual, every Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern time, I am streaming. But next week, I will actually be in New York. I don't know if I will be able to do a stream next week. I'm going to try to, but we'll see if that happens. If it does happen, it'll probably be a little bit different, because I'll be in New York for one, and I'll probably be in like a house with a whole bunch of people too. But just a reminder too, if anyone is looking for consultations, I do consultations. So if you want one-on-one time to sit down with me, have me go through your research, or help you answer a question, or help you figure out your DNA results, or whatever, be sure to send me an email at geneavlogger@gmail.com. And then beyond that, go and watch some of my videos. If you go look at my video sequence and see if there's any that you missed. And I appreciate that. But yeah, thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you for the wishes. And yeah, hopefully we'll have a very good 2026 for genealogy, and we'll see some big changes, some real steps forward. So I am the Genie Vlogger.